President Trump's re-election campaign is also weighing in on tonight's Democratic presidential primary debate. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Burns spoke with the Trump campaign's national press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, earlier.
This is the fourth Democratic debate, but what's different this time is that the impeachment inquiry is going on. The president seems very defensive against the impeachment inquiry, but how is this kind of changing your campaign strategy moving forward?
Well, for us, we were always prepared for this. You know, we had been making the case since I was back at the RNC before joining the campaign that should you turn over the House to Democrats, they will pursue impeachment. Democrats said, no, that's not our intent, but here we are. So we knew as far back as the midterms that this was the inevitable outcome. They would find something, anything to glom onto to remove the president from power. So we were ready for this. I think the biggest challenge is we're trying to keep the focus on the issues here, the economy and healthcare and the things that Americans care about. But with Democrats continually bringing up impeachment and new witnesses, it makes it difficult to keep that as the narrative and the focus.
Are you concerned at all, though, that Democrats have something here? I mean, unlike the Russia investigation, we're getting evidence in real time from congressional investigators, people who worked in the White House closely with the president. Is that concerning to the campaign at all?
No, we're not concerned about that at all, because the bottom line is we've read the transcript. We've read what the president said to the Ukrainian president. It's there for all to see. That is the only true account of what happened, and it shows no quid pro quo. So whatever a whistleblower has to say, who's represented by an attorney who also has represented Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer, who we know spoke with someone on Adam Schiff's staff before listening and putting forward this complaint, whatever a whistleblower has to say, none of that can change what the actual transcript says. There's no quid pro quo. So Democrats pursuing this route, I think it will backfire as it's revealed that they don't really care about focusing on the economy and healthcare. This is all about taking down President Trump.
What did you all make of Hunter Biden's interview today?
He looked very defensive. It was kind of befuddling that he would have chosen to do this interview, particularly when he did have that honest moment of saying, hey, if I didn't have the last name of Biden, perhaps I wouldn't have gotten these lucrative gigs on this board. That was a revealing moment. And why do an interview when you're going to come out and admit that it's essentially your last name that caused you to get these jobs? I think raised more questions than answers. So we at the campaign saw it, and wow, interesting decision by Joe Biden.
The Biden campaign argues that the president is going after him because he believes he is would be the most successful challenger against him, that he would be best equipped to win against Donald Trump. Is that why the president's keeping his focus on Joe Biden?
No, he's gone after other candidates. After all, it is Elizabeth Warren who has the nickname of Pocahontas. He's gone after Elizabeth Warren for her falsely claiming Native American heritage. He's taken shots at any number of the candidates. So it's not a specific focus on Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden is the inevitable name that keeps coming up. One, because he is the former frontrunner. I'd argue that Elizabeth Warren is now. But number two, we're talking about Ukraine. And with that, inevitably, it leads to a discussion about the Burisma board that Hunter Biden sat on.
What do you say to those who say, look, Donald Trump has his own daughter serving in the White House, being paid by taxpayers, that his sons are still working at his company? Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Well, the Trumps were successful long before President Trump came into power. The business that's being run by Eric and Don Jr. was there long before President Trump became president. And in fact, they've taken many measures to ensure that there is a deep separation between the official state side and things at the Trump organization. There's zero crossover. And as for Ivanka working in the White House, she's a highly qualified woman. She started her own company. Now she's devoted her life prior to the White House to women and has taken that initiative into the White House to great success with WGDP, paid family leave, which she is responsible for getting in the president's budget, the child tax credit. So her portfolio is benefiting every woman across this country. And there's no benefit like what we saw with Hunter Biden getting lucrative gigs because of his father's official position.
But I think a lot of Democrats would say tonight that the president is doing the same thing, that the Trump children benefited also from Trump's name.
No, they didn't get anything for which they were not qualified for. So, for instance, I would challenge you, anyone else, the Democrats, to name something Ivanka got or Jared got or anyone got that they hadn't worked for or they weren't entitled to. It's much different when Hunter Biden had zero experience in energy, walks away with $1 billion deal, goes with his dad to China, has little experience, and if anything, bad experience in private equity because his uncle's firm came under a lot of legal scrutiny, and then walks away with a $1.5 billion private equity deal, again, for which he had no experience. So when you walk in with no experience, you get these gigs. That is a very different scenario, and I think voters can understand that.
Is this something that we're going to continue to see from the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. We will continue to bring up Hunter Biden. As the president said, it was "Where's Hunter?" at his 2 rallies. And, Hunter, we saw him today. He came out, and it wasn't good for Hunter Biden. His explanation was very defensive. His explanation got him into more trouble. So he's raised more questions, and I think the focus will continue to be there so long as Joe Biden is in the race.
And you mentioned Elizabeth Warren. She has been on the rise, overtaking Joe Biden in our most recent poll. Does that change the campaign's strategy at all, knowing that she is rising and could become the nominee?
I don't think so. We've been prepared, as I've said to you before, we treat this group as a homogenous whole. So whether it's Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden, there are obviously different personal issues with each, but they represent the same ideology. So for us, that leftist extremism that Elizabeth Warren represents is the same one that Joe Biden represents. So whoever emerges, it doesn't change our strategy. We'll see what happens tonight, whether Elizabeth Warren gives Joe Biden that final punch and becomes the inevitable nominee.
And I want to talk about foreign policy, because that hasn't really been an issue in this Democratic primary so far, but it figures to become one tonight given the president's recent moves in Syria that have a lot of Republicans actually criticizing that policy. How is the campaign responding to that?
The president, for a long time, since he first became a candidate, said that he did not want this country to be in endless wars. He made a commitment and a vow to voters, and if there's one thing about President Trump I think everyone can agree on, he sticks to his word. Whether that is getting out of Syria, as he said he would do, getting us out of endless wars, getting us out of the TPP, getting us out of the Paris Climate Accord. He is a president who's kept his word as a candidate, and that includes foreign policy and what we've seen and the decisions made in Syria.
And even when his fellow Republicans, even, allies like Lindsey Graham, very critical and concerned really about this policy, does that change anything?
No, it doesn't. The president was firm and steadfast in saying he wants to come home. He wants to bring our troops home. He doesn't want to be in Syria endlessly like we have been in Afghanistan endlessly. So now we know the vice president is going to go over tomorrow to Turkey to talk to Erdogan. We're going to do everything in our power to ensure that the Kurds are protected, that in fact Turkey stays out of this, or at least does not meddle in this in a way that is devastating for this population. But we're also going to ensure that the United States is not wrapped up in endless wars, does not have a perpetual endless presence on the ground there.
And then finally, since we're here in Ohio, it is a swing state, but Donald Trump won it overwhelmingly in 2016. Anything different you think the campaign is doing here in Ohio to ensure that the president wins re-election here? Yeah,
there's a lot different. This is a different kind of campaign in that we have a lot more time. 2016 was a much smaller group, so it was just running from rally to rally. They got the job done, which counts, but this time we've had the advantage of time and organization, which is why I was over in Powell, Ohio today with Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, the local Ohio Chairwoman Jane Temkin, talking to a group of women about how they can get out, get motivated, talk to their friends and neighbors, because ground games are what wins elections. Strategic decision-making wins elections. Events like today, being on the ground, motivating volunteers, that wins elections. And at each of these Democrat debates, we have been on the ground, talking to women at a lot of these, but just talking to supporters and motivating a grassroots, an army of grassroots volunteers that we think will win Ohio and much of the rest of the nation.
And the Trump campaign and the RNC raised a lot of money in this past quarter. You have some Democrats like Elizabeth Warren saying that she's not going to do big dollar fundraisers if she's the nominee. How does the campaign view that?
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, she is someone who got a lot of money from big-time colleges on the backs of a lot of students who put their money into those colleges. So she's someone who's done quite well for herself. She wants to try to say that she is some socialist out there who is taking this higher pledge. She can do so, but we will expose a lot of her hypocrisies in doing so.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.